they're going through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that book would most probably help them.
Yeah.
Okay, so keep that in mind.
Prevent all the problems. Yeah, if only if somebody had handed me Feed the Need when I was a teen, I can't tell you how many bad relationships I would have avoided. I can't tell you how many things I would have just, I mean, not that I wouldn't have screwed up things, because Lord knows I would have, but I would have really been able to prevent a lot of pain in my own life by being able to see things in a way that gave me more health and more empowerment and more clarity about the whys, like where all that stuff was coming from. And that would have helped me. So it's my gift back to try to, prevent some of that.
And I think it's great. It's needed. So, okay, let's talk about this Raised by Wolves.
Okay. Yeah, so it leads right into little landslides. So a friend of mine, Ann Hampton, has used that phrase a lot. And when she said it, I said, we are soul sisters. Because being raised by wolves is just this, harsh reality of fending for yourself at some level and trying to figure out how to navigate the world without people who are really protecting you or guiding you in any way, but just kind of, let's just nomadically wander through the world and figure things out as we go. And that was really my upbringing, was this rough and tumble kind of figure it out. Yeah, just go. And being thrown to them. The wolves, as it were, to be able to figure that out. So that's what I did.
And when you read this book, you should read this book, okay? You have to read it slowly because it pulls you right in. You're just such a wonderful writer.
Thank you.
You express yourself so well that you're pulled right in, and you find yourself holding your breath.
Yeah, it's a hard read.
It's a hard read because the story is a hard story.
Yeah, it's funny because somebody they told me today, they said, I ordered your book. I plan to read it over the summer. And I said, I wish I could say enjoy it, but I'm really not able to say that at all because it's horrific. It's a horrific story, but it's the truth. And to set up the story itself, what I did was I spoke with a friend of mine again, Ann Hampton, who is a writer coach, and she said to me, she said, Bridget, you could write your story, and it could be from here, from birth to today, which is a whole lot of ground to cover, and people are going to be not bored to tears maybe because you've got a riveting story, but it just keeps going and going. So you've got to find what she called a container. So I thought about it and I thought, okay, so what is my container and what is my purpose for writing this book? And my purpose for writing the book was to show people by example that there's a way through the pain, that there's, you don't have to get stuck in it. You don't have to carry it around for the rest of your life. You don't have to throw it at everybody. Not that you're not going to mess up. You're not going to stumble and fall. You are, but that there's a way to get through it. So I had to come at it at some level from the Dr. B perspective of how do you do it, the how-to manual of it, right? But in order to make it really affecting people, to be able to really like reach into their guts and grab a hold so that they could pay attention to the message of this, I had to write it from a first-person perspective. But that container was, for me, about where did the pain start and where did the pain shift? Where was my pivot point in the pain? And for me, the pivot point in the pain was the start of the pain to the point at which I decided I wasn't going to try to kill myself anymore, that I wasn't going to try to get out of this life, that I was going to actually engage in it, that I was going to rest in it, and I was going to make something of my life. I was going to turn this pain into something useful for somebody else. And I remember walking into my psychologist's office when I was in college, when I had again decided no more suicide attempts. I'd had 3, one very serious, and I said, I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to live through this. And I walked into her office and I said, I'm really grateful for the experiences that I've had, and you've read the books, you know what they are. And she was like,
What?
And I said, no, I'm really grateful because I'm going to do something with this. I'm going to make something out of this. I'm going to take my pain and I'm going to transform it into something that's going to help other people. I'm going to heal other people through my pain. That's going to make this worth it. And she's like, little righty then. So that was what we did, was walked through, like, how do I heal this? How do I let go of the stuff that's dragging me down, that's pulling me into that depressive state, that wanting to give up and wanting to just do what it was that my parents showed me to do, which was to numb it, deny it, wallow in it and let it kill us, because both of my parents effectively killed themselves. And how do I go about moving beyond that? So that was the container, and in that container, in those stories, I knew that in order to affect people the way that I wanted to affect them, I had to crawl up in my skin at those ages and tell the story firsthand. I had to have the readers see what I saw, feel what I felt, think what I thought, so that they could really be moved by it, to understand that I wasn't just going, and then when I was 3, this happened, and then because then it's like the pain's over here and you can't really get up to it. So in order to pay tribute to that so that it could be transformational for people, I did that. And it's a hard read. And as you know, the first 2 stories are written before memory. So there were the only 2, there are 16 stories, but the first 2 stories were written before a person would have conscious memory. And people have asked me, and you might have, and I've cheated you out of your question, but how did I write those without having the memory of them? And it was, one, through narration by my mom, that I knew that those things had happened, that she had shared with me that those things had happened. But also I just sat and I said, I have to trust that the body remembers what the mind chooses to forget, that the memories are in me, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down at my computer, and before I opened it up and put my fingers to the keys, I said, just let the story come through me. Just let it be what it's supposed to be. And they were written in 10 or 15 minutes, both of those vignettes. I didn't think them. I didn't try them. I didn't push them. I just let them. They typed themselves. And so they are, and I give this disclaimer in the book, they are as true to form as I can make them. The others I remember clearly. Those 2 just came to the pages.
Amazing.
So, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Can you share with us some of your pain so
Some
that
of
they
my
understand?
stories. Yeah, the context of that. So when I think I shared this at the meeting that you and I met at, somebody said, okay, Bridget, stop talking around it and talk to it. And I said, oh, all right, so you want me to get down and dirty with this. So my father began beating me when I was 8 weeks old for the first time. And those beatings continued until he stopped living with us when I was about 2.5. And during that period of 2.5 years, he would beat and rape me and my mother routinely. So there was a lot of physical, verbal, I'm sure, sexual, emotional abuse going on in that household. And that relationship continued through until the point of the story that they ended with at the age of 18, when I decided to live. Part of deciding to live was deciding to remove him from my life, because for all of those years, he was still coming in and out of my life and approaching me in desperate circumstances and sexual circumstances, and wanting to be saved by me, and at the same time not receiving my assistance. So that continual in and abandonment was just a very big picture in my life. And all of that was then marked by my mother's depression, my mother's alcoholism, my mother's sexual promiscuity and exposure for me, and all of the people who then saw me as this walking, talking victim and sensed me like, a wolf senses the weakest link in a pack, and sexually abused me during my, young years, age 6, 7, 8 years old. So all of that, that history was what was creating this just, oh my gosh, somebody stop this, somebody step in, somebody save me, somebody be my hero. And it wasn't until I reached 18 that I went, oh, no hero's coming. I'm going to have to be my own hero, because that's how that's going to work. Because I'm sitting here by myself and nobody's stepping in for me. Nobody's got my back. And so, and not that I didn't have friends, and not that I didn't have angels, and not that I didn't have people showing up to the table, but each of them, unfortunately, was not able to step in the way that was necessary to be able to extricate me from what I was caught up in. So I had to. So I did. And so the book is about how do you do that. So the back of the book is the 6-step, 6-part process. And I hate to be kitschy like that about, 6 steps or whatever, but I broke it down into 6 components of trying to figure out how to rise up and let it be a beautiful thing that's happened to you versus the thing that creates more pain in your and everybody you touch's lives. Because clearly that's who touched me, were other people who were in pain themselves. Yes. So
it's, as you can tell, it's quite a powerful story. And she tells it so clearly, so you can close your eyes and see it. And it's just so powerful. Yes, I had to then realize I was holding my breath as I was reading and put the book down and then breathe so that I could, recover, so to speak.
Yeah, and it's funny. So, and I want to ask you. I'm going to ask the interviewer a question. So, in the book, because this is my life. So I've lived my life. I've seen the things. I've felt the things. I've experienced the things. So for me, they are here and they're still in my cells, but they're not shocking, right? They're not like I'm turning the page and wondering what happens next and being thrown off my chair by it. So I was really sensitive to the reader. I was really careful, and I wanted to be careful, one, about showing up in truth and in all of the raw honesty that I did, but also taking care of the reader. So at the end of each of the stories, I wrote a letter back to myself to try to let the reader know it's okay.
Yes,
she's
I know.
Gonna be okay. And I did that, trying to it's okay. And even writing the book and showing my picture on the back side and in my, you could see my bio. I'm like, no, guys, I'm okay. So for those of you who don't know me or haven't seen me speak, I've really got my stuff together. I mean, I'm not perfect. I show up to things, a mess in my head sometimes, and I stumble over things, and I still have my demons.
It's called being human.
Yeah.
Yes.
But I'm not the person who you might imagine me to be given those occurrences. I'm not walking around with my pain pack, just handing it to people or begging for it to be relieved. So those letters back to myself were this way of saying, one, this is what I wished I'd heard when I was there, because it would have saved me probably every subsequent pain. But also a way of telling the reader, this is the voice that I have now to heal that little girl who didn't have anybody holding her safe.
Yes, and that did kind of save the reader, really and truly. Yeah. But the thing is, sometimes I couldn't get through to that part because I was inside watching this happen, and I couldn't do it. I had to stop.
Yeah. I had a number of people who actually contacted me, empaths, people who, one, have had, and I put a full-page disclaimer, as you know, in there that says if you have an abuse history, you're going to need to get, line up the troops, figure out the resources, have a speed dial person, you can call, because it's legit, it's hard stuff, but at the same time, empaths who feel like we feel, who can experience the pain in real time, had to step back from it. I had several people who were readers, because I had 38 people read it before I went to print, because I wanted to hear from them. Had I shocked them? Had I hurt them? Had I damaged them in some way? Was it too much? Was my story too much? And some of them, probably half a dozen of them, said I couldn't read it. I got to the second story and I had to put it down. And what I found was most interesting was I had a couple of people reach out to me after reading it with somebody who I hadn't talked to in 30 some odd years. They were like a neighbor of mine, and had read it and said, I'm so sorry that I didn't step in. Oh. And I thought, you know, I wish I could take that away from you. I can't, because maybe you could have. But what I loved about that was that it woke them up to the fact that we have to stand up and step in for other people, especially those who need our assistance, who are too weak or trapped to be able to do it for themselves. That even when it's hard, even when it brings trouble to our door, we have to step up and step in. Like, that is a requirement. And that's something that I wanted people to be inspired by in this story, was to say, if somebody had stepped up or stepped in for me, they could have prevented half of those stories. And not out of a place of anger or blame, but out of a place of recognition that now we have to do that. Like, we have to be those
aware and
present and stop it somewhere.
My daughter once told me, Mom, you can't save them all.
Nope.
Because even as a kid, I'd bring home, you know, new child in town, coming into my class, come home with me for dinner. You know, animals, I'd bring them home. We had issues, but I had, compared to this, I had a loving household, a functioning household. I won't get into that. However, some of this did kind of take me, I related to some of it with myself, you know, in some of the stages that I have gone through in my life. And I still step in, I see a problem. Ta-da! Here I go, the savior, you know. And
let me get my cape on.
Yes, exactly. And my daughter just goes, oh, Mom, you know. Okay. And I say, I can't help it. It is who I am. I am starting to think first, though, now. So I finally learned that part.
Absolutely.
Doesn't mean I won't do it, though.
No.
You know.
But it's funny. So I was just doing some work with the Connecticut Department of Correction, and we're putting together have put together this unit at the maximum security prison in Cheshire, what they call the Rock. And it's this therapeutic unit where they have lifers who are mentoring young adult offenders, trying to create an opportunity for change, for enlightenment, for connection, for, you know, insight, for all of that, which is really a challenge to the corrections officers and the counselor staff in interacting with inmates in a way that they haven't in the past. And I shared some of my story because my dad I grew up with my dad in prison most of my life, in and out, and what that was for me. And one of the things that he had written to me was, baby, don't ever spend your time trying to save somebody who doesn't want your help. And at the time, I didn't realize he was talking about himself, right? I kept trying that one for years. But I said to these corrections officers and counselors that for those who do want to be saved, for those who do want their help, they have the opportunity to change lives. So it's not about trying to save and wrestle down the alligator that doesn't want to get out of the water, but to be able to invite those people who do want inspiration, who do want change, who do want a second chance, who can be seen and be assisted, to offer them that opportunity, because there are a lot of people out there who have the potential to bring a better self into the world.
Absolutely. And I understand that totally, because just quick story. When I lived in Rochester, New York, and I was working in radio and television. Surprise! And I used to have co-hosts come in and bring people with their story. I had a local newspaper reporter who did this series on inmates at Attica. And he brought a couple of what we call graduates who were newly out. He brought them on the show. And it was fascinating because they talked about how other inmates, they have this program where they all get together and sit in a circle, and they pick one person and they work with that person and break that person down to admitting who they are, what they've done, and that begins the healing process. And this one guy was sitting there talking, and he says, yes, I killed my wife and 2 children years ago. And I'm going, oh my God. But wow, had he come a long way. And because of that intervention,
Right.
it was a religious group, started out as a religious group on the outside, that called themselves Cephas, C-E-P-H-A-S, and they had bought a series of stores in Spencerport, and they had a bakery, a construction company. They had several stores, and that's where the graduates went to learn a trade.
Yeah, kind of like Salvation Army or Goodwill or something.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
same sort of,
And it was, so I was given the opportunity to go inside Attica, dressed down, no makeup, bulky clothes, and be invited to quietly sit in one of these events. And I went back twice because it was the tension, the energy, it was amazing.
So powerful.
Very powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge intervention, if you will.
Right.
And to see a man, a huge man, on the floor, on his hands and knees, crying, just, with his heart right there, okay?
Yeah.
And showing his soul to all of us.
Right.
And then we all went and hugged him and held him and told him, now you can heal.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I tell my girls this all the time, hurt people hurt people. So when we see someone who's, an inmate or some other person who's hurt somebody, they're hurting. This is where that comes from. It comes from hurt. So until we find the basis of the hurt and try to fix the hurt, we're not going to be able to really solve the problem. And I love your story. I was so excited when I had this opportunity to work with Connecticut Department of Correction, because when I was living down in Virginia, I was a volunteer at the county jail in Fairfax County, and I used to go in and do a couple of things. I did anger management and conflict resolution training, and I also went in as part of their Impact of Crime series, which was going in as a victim of crime and talking about the crime and how it affected me to try to reduce recidivism, try to increase empathy, because they've done a lot of brain studies understanding that in having those contacts that people can actually grow their empathetic part of their brain to be able to be less likely to reoffend in a way that would hurt somebody. There's like real brain science around that. So I would go in and talk about my experience, but first I would send them this little write-up, nothing like little Landslides, but a one-pager, and then with some discussion questions. And then I would come in, and since I've been an instructor before, it seemed like I was instructing. So I would talk to them about the story, and it would just be some of the high points that are in little Landslides. And I would say, so one of the questions was, what do you think this person looks like now? And they were saying she's probably on the streets, or she's incarcerated, or she's a drug addict, or she's dead. And I would look at them and say, no, that's me. And so shifting for them the sense that in that pain that they could be something else was a huge shift. But you talk about that big guy on the floor. So my story is that in in one of those classes, this guy, big burly guy, big man on campus. He said, I hate my father. He's a bleep, beep, bleep, 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 SOB, all the rest. And I hate him. He hurt, my family. He left us. He was in jail. He was a drug user. He told me I was never going to amount to anything. I hate him. And there was a group of about 20. And now understand, I'm the only person in the room that isn't an inmate. And we're locked in. We're, guards have us on, cameras.
They're watching,
but I mean,
but
I'm
right
locked
there.
in there. Yeah, it's going to take a couple of seconds for somebody to get to me if I mess this up, right? So, me, I'm a real intimidating figure, right? 5'3" and 100 and whatever pounds, 120 pounds. And so I'm sitting there in this room with these guys, and I looked at them and I said, So I said, so when do you think you're going to stop being loyal to your dad?
Oh boy.
This guy lost his mind. He was like, and he's jumping off his chair at me. And the rest of the group, because it wasn't at them, it was around them, they were like, oh, she got you, man. Right? And he goes, what do you mean I'm not loyal to him? And I said, that's interesting, because you've both grown up to be who he was as well as who he told you you would be. So maybe you give up being loyal to his image of you and who he was, and you choose happiness and your own path. And he was like, and then it's like started to like get on him like a really uncomfortable coat, you know?
Yeah.
And when he left, he was like eyes filled up with tears, hugged me, thanked me. And it is my dream, Marilyn, my dream to be doing some keynote somewhere doing a workshop and have that man walk up to me and say, that made all the difference. Because that was such a powerful moment of recognizing how loyal we become to the pain that we've suffered, how loyal we become to the image that was created for us by somebody who was in an undefinable amount of pain and placed that on us as our own lens. And then we operate through it and under it. And then we wonder why our lives are chaotic and painful and damaged and broken and hard. Maybe we give up that little connection to that. So that was a transformational
Wow. Holy
moment.
cow.
Yeah.
You've given us a lot to think about.
I hope so.
And the thing is, you have also given us a living example of what you can do to rise above the pain. And do you still, every once in a while, run into that little girl
Oh, God,
and
yes.
talk to her and say, it's okay, you're fine?
Yeah, I mean, she pops up sometimes. I still have my inner demons. There's friends joke with me. They're like, there's this one place in your life, which we won't discuss on the show, but there's this one place in my life that the demons always pop up. It's just the place that, you know, they just keep coming back to me. And I have to remind myself of all the things that I've been through, of all the ways that I've risen above. But yeah, I mean, there's tendrils. And I think part of it, this woman, this healer who I met with, said to me, it's like you're like a maze of pain and you shoved things. Like you've done so much work, but in places you've like shoved them into these little maze points in these little corners and been like, I'll deal with you later just to get through, right? And sometimes those things either block me or pop up, and then I have to just face them and release them, process them, and that's where good friends come in real handy. Yeah, and coaches like me.
Exactly. Well, this has been a pleasure. We could talk
you.
for another
We-
hour.
oh, hours,
And
yeah.
our time is just about up.
you.
You've given us so much to think about.
appreciate
And there's a lot more on her website, which
Yep.
is right there.
Oh, there you go.
And if
Yep.
you'd like to contact Dr. B,
Yes, you
okay?
certainly can.
And
I
why
would love
wouldn't you
that.
want to? She's amazing, as you
you.
can see.
Thank you, yeah.
There's the contact
There you go.
information.
Yeah,
This
if
is-
anybody needs help in trying to figure out where their pain is coming from and how to release it out into the ethers so that it's not driving their life, or they've got any of these organizational concerns, I can help people one-on-one. I can help you in groups, and I just want to. You got to help me with my mission to save, change the world one
she's
life
on
at
a
a
mission
time.
here.
Get out of my way! No, join in. I need partners.
Well, I'd like to thank you very
Thank
much
you
for being on
very
our show. I
much.
knew it was going to be great. I knew it was going to be great.
had
I also
fun.
like to thank you, the viewer. I'd like to thank our sponsors, too. Without them, they love us, we love them. And as you know, I always finish with a quote that kind of ties in with what we're talking about. So I picked one from Malcolm X on adversity. Every defeat, every heartbreak, every loss contains its own seed, its own lesson on how to improve your performance the next time, or how to improve your life the next time, okay? Thank you so much for joining us. So we'll see you again on From This Corner TV.